How's it going, everybody? Thank you again for joining us on another wonderful podcast. Again, as always, am joined by Mr. Brian Heater, our sound tech engineer maestro. And today we're going
Wizard.
to, wizard, sound wizard. I apologize for misnaming you. Um, we are going to be doing another deep dive into Afrofuturism because this is such a large and lengthy topic. We felt it needed at least um, two episodes. So last time we focused a lot on the history um, of Afrofuturism, kind of looking at stuff from the 1950s up until about the 1990s, ending with um, some authors and the parable of the sower. And then so Octavia Butler was the author of Parable of the Sower. And now we're going to go in and start from 90s ish and move on upwards through the 2000s. So, Brian, you've been focusing on the music side of things because that's your background. Before we dive into some specific examples, what are some things that you sort of were struck by or thought was interesting while you're doing your research throughout all of the sort of Afrofuturism movement within music?
Uh, well, one of the most interesting things I think for at least for Afrofuturism and how it relates to music, is that I think that the entire um, meaning and like kind of vibes. I guess feeling would be a good word. The entire feeling of the songs of the pieces change when you marry them with images, and I think that that's important because these pieces aren't just it's they're not just creating hits. They're not just hits, which is kind of like right. They're not just something that you could just like jam out to listen to. I mean, you can jam out to them for sure because they're a lot of them are incredibly. A lot of the examples that we're going to go through are haunting, and some of them are like jamming. But my point is that when you marry them to image, it's like the context totally shifts with what the song means, with what the piece means,
Hmm.
and you start to kind of think about what the lyrics really mean. If there's lyrics in the song, not all of these pieces will have like really featured lyrics, or at least lyrics that will be easy to understand.
Hmm.
At least the stuff that we're going to talk about, today. But I think that it's kind of interesting how much Afrofuturism has to rely, at least for the music, has to rely on, in my opinion, has to rely on images to kind of convey what you can't necessarily always get across um, in like direct words,
Hmm.
as or at least as effectively, like it won't move you in the same way,
Yeah.
right?
I
If
think
I tell you that a dog is red, is it gonna is are you gonna be like, okay, the dog is red, I see the dog is red? Or if I paint a dog that is red, you're gonna be like, that's a red dog, right?
yeah. I think that there's two things that come to my mind when you bring that up, and it's one, like last week we discussed the idea of like having to look at these things kind of holistically,
Yeah.
right? You can't just pick out one element from it and say this element is what Afrofuturism is. It's more about a holistic approach to all the different elements combined that play with these different themes and ideas. The other thing that kind of comes to my mind is I think we have such a specific language for music, just like we have a language for everything else. We have a visual language, we have a language of English, we have a language of culture, we have a language of music. And I think that there's such a specific mode of thinking and operating that is specifically like Western centric and Eurocentric that like we can convey spaciness and time travel and stuff like that through music, right? And you don't even necessarily need to have the visuals to go with it explore these things, right? Like think Tron, it's in a cyber world, right? But that's because like we've built up this language over the course of decades and centuries specific to the, musical genre or whatever genre we're talking about that
Absolutely.
conveys like spaciness and science fictioniness or like cyberness or whatever it is. And like we can convey cyberpunk through music just like we can convey space through music, just so we can convey romanticism through music. But it's done through such a very specific lens that anything else outside of that specific language, any other language that like a lot of Afrofuturism tries to bring in, oftentimes through like Sun Ra is trying to bring in through jazz and stuff, and a lot of others are trying to do it through like hip hop and everything. They're doing it through a different language than what is predominant in the Western culture, which is why I think it feels so different and so alien, and we have a hard time recognizing it as like science fiction or as spaciness or as like technological, right? Like I think one of the reasons why you mentioned like it's really hard for you to like hear the Afrofuturism in it is because we've just never that's never been a part of our actual like musical language, right? Does that make sense?
I think it does make sense, and I think that you're correct about kind of our musical vocabulary being built up over time to kind of be accepting over certain styles and modalities and meters and things like this. 100% that's true. There's actually something like there are specific ways that chords want to move, right? That your brain, even though you don't know them, right? Your brain doesn't know what they are. uh like it knows what they are and what they feel like,
Yeah.
or rather it like knows where they want to go. And when when it feels right, and and your brain also knows when it doesn't feel right, right?
And
and that
even
and
yeah,
that's
go ahead.
from years and years and years and years of listening.
Yeah.
And I think that it's challenging to subvert those expectations, uh and
Or
when people
it's
do them.
yeah, it's
uh
challenging to work within a different mode,
Yeah,
right?
what I mean is it's challenging to subvert those expectations and then do it really effectively, is what I should have said.
Yeah.
Uh, I just think that when you combine that kind of with a new film language, which is
Mhm.
kind of essentially what's happening, right?
Yeah.
It creates like a really really interesting um, medium. And I think that when we get into like the Flying Lotus example, when we get into that, it's going to be a lot different than the other Afrofuturist examples that we've looked at. And I think part of that is because it feels so, like it feels current, but there's also this really like out there, not futuristic feel, but like a otherworldly feel.
Hmm.
I mean, aliens, you keep saying aliens because it's the feeling of being like an other, or
Yeah.
like different.
Not like
But I
outer
do.
space aliens, but like alienation, like feeling like the other, like you said. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that that example will really drive it home, that kind of like the feeling of like not really belonging, maybe not belonging, but like not feeling like you're meant here, and like you're not on this world for forever, essentially.
Yeah.
That type of feeling. And that there's a place that you're destined for.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. It does kind of uh think about, look to heritage. It looks at heritage, it looks at destiny, it looks at kind of like um familial roles, I think. Um, I think that it's easy to get really absorbed. Now I'm getting a little off track, but I think it's easy to get absorbed in the kind of space futuristic uh, aspect of
Aspects.
Afrofuturism, when I think a lot of it is about like you have to get to the roots of like Afrofuturism. Like it's about like African roots
Yeah.
at its core. It's about blackness at its core, right?
Yeah.
So kind of like I really do think that when we talk about that video in particular, it's gonna make a lot of sense for
Yeah.
people just watching it. So
And I think in my research too, like there's a lot of Afro features and stuff, but there's also like a lot of stuff that's like being lumped in there that is exploring all the same themes that aren't necessarily like futuristic sci-fi. They're fantasy stuff, right?
yeah,
And like science fiction and fantasy has always kind of been blended together just because they're always been seen as a bit of a pulpy art form. But it's really clear here that no, they're exploring the same exact things through a fantasy lens or through a science fiction lens or some mixed blend of the two. And yeah, I think that's focusing on the themes as you mentioned and what the core of it is as opposed to the style on
the
top of
kind of
it is really
aspects. Yeah,
yeah
yeah,
is really what makes
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that sort of like long preamble, um, which song do you have for us first? What's on docket?
Well, let's go to the Many Moons. The Many
Okay,
Moons.
Janelle
Sure.
Monáe.
Yeah.
All right.
I feel like this is a really good. I'm kind of skipping straight into the 2000s. The term, I think we talked about this last time. The term like Afrofuturist didn't even make it into the lexicon. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Until like 1994, I think. Right, Black to the Future. The
If I don't think Afrofuturism was even then. I think it's like later than that. Because I
there's
remember
an
like
article. There's an article where a guy coins a term, and
yeah. Was
it's
that
the article is called Black to the Future.
okay? And that's 1994.
I believe that it
Okay.
is. I was just reading about it the
Because
other
I
day.
remember because I read the article but I didn't like look at the timeline of when it was. But I remember him talking about Octavia Butler and Octavia Butler was doing a lot of like she was doing her work for all like the 70s and 80s and stuff, but she got really predominant in like the 90s and early 2000s when she got discovered. But maybe he was reaching back to like the work she did in the 80s and everything. But okay, so let's do Janelle Monáe. Um,
So I want to kind of preface this with this EP. This is kind of like this EP is kind of like a cyber or a sorry, not it's a Afrofuturist. It has
mhm.
cyberpunk vibes. That's why I said
Yeah.
that. Like like EP. If you listen to it in its entirety, it Janelle kind of she introduces this character called I think it's Cindy Mayweather or Merriweather. Cindy Mayweather. Yeah. Cindy Mayweather, who is a traveling android who, quote, after breaking the law by falling in love with a human, goes on the run from Metropolis Ministry of Droids. Okay, so this like entire EP, which this track that we're going to be taking a listen to is about, is like kind of like has that Afrofuturist vibe, like very very much on the surface level. Like it's very
So
obvious,
it's
in my
easy to
opinion.
point out and see. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
All right. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give it a whirl. Like the commodification or the disempowerment of women or whatever who are forced in who can be like if you think about the 1950s and 60s and so on that were forced in these roles of domestic house keepers just through like the societal need to marry.
Yeah. Um, I really like that song in general, just because it's a good song. Uh, and everybody should definitely go check out, the rest of it. I don't
I'm
think
just gonna pull this up just because I love the artwork, but go ahead and keep talking.
that is really good artwork. Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's what
The
everybody should be
cover,
checking out. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, the Chase Suite. there's actually a really good article that talks about, kind of goes into the whole story of this and how it started. So, anyways,
Yeah, hit me
it's
up with that
pretty.
article and I'll post it up on our YouTube channel.
All right.
Not
So
now, but afterwards.
why don't we move on, unless you have something else to say
No,
about
I think
this
like I
specific
like
video?
I think obviously Metropolis is a really famous sci-fi film from oh, I should know this. Fritz Lang. Fritz Lang. Oh my God, my film teacher would have killed me. Um, and it's a a German sci-fi film in which there's like this mechanization, and then there's this idea of there's this one woman who's seen as this like anti-capitalist or anti mechanized prophet, and she gets coveted after and turned into an android that people can own, and that's part of that story. And so I find it interesting that they're still bringing this back forward as well.
Very
Um,
interesting. It seems very similar to themes that are in this music video and in this album.
EP, yeah,
Also, yeah, in this, or yeah, in this EP
and I'm
as
sure
well.
that's why they pulled it out too. I'm sure that wasn't just by accident.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but okay, no,
Uh,
that was really good. Do you have closing thoughts on it?
uh, Other than I think that it's interesting that I think that a lot of the fashion, the kind of fashion stuff is still going on today. She's super involved in the fashion industry,
Hmm.
Janelle Monáe. Um, so it's just interesting that she's inside. I'm sure that she has brought a lot of positiveness, a lot of goodness to the fashion industry,
Yeah.
um, from being within it.
Here's hoping. I don't know.
Here's
After watching Neon Demon, I feel there's no hope for any fashion industry.
Moving on to something that's a little bit less futurist. I wanted to look at the Petite Noir uh,
Okay.
music video because I just love the striking imagery uh, in this music video. This is a South African artist. We've been talking about mostly American artists.
And that's
Uh,
one thing too. Like, and I'll get into this when I do the stuff on like books and art. But like the movement has been so it's still been American centric. Even if there are ties to a Pan African movement, it's been very American centric for decades now. And
yeah,
there hasn't been much outside of the US when it comes to these things, and it's just now getting there into Africa itself and into the Pan African diaspora. So I find it interesting how it took so long for these ideas to actually spread beyond just like these small little um, enclaves within the US. But all right, South African artist Petite Noir.
interesting that the reason why I wanted to stop on the end of we watched that whole thing unfortunately.
That's fine.
But
I think
okay.
I don't think we could have gone through what we want to go through without watching the whole thing.
Yeah, because there's so much good imagery there.
Yeah.
At the end of the Janelle Monáe music video, she's also rising up into the air like that.
Yeah. There's this idea of like ascension happening, and again, like Afrofuturism being a form of like speculative fiction that can give hope to like the oppressed people. Like I think that's the fact that they both end on a note of like there's this fight, there's these battles, there's this almost oppressive feeling. Like every landscape he's in is oppressive, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Giant rolling seas, the sparse desert dunes, the mountainous green thunder and lightning. Like there's no landscape there that we feel like is to be made home. But even through that like distinct, you know, oppressive landscape or dangerous landscapes, he's still able to find a way to ascend. Even the green rocks are jagged and sharp. Like you feel like if he fell, while he was running, he's gonna get himself cut up. And it's similar with Janelle Monáe, where she is also in this like oppressive landscape as a model being, sold on the market, but also still at the end of it gets to, ascend, as it were.
It's interesting that they can say such similar things and be totally like I feel like this example is so much more removed, like so stripped down
Yeah.
to its core of like this is literally just a man running across like different landscapes, and it says so much
Mhm.
like so much of the same that Janelle Monae's piece
It
does.
does also remind me a little bit of the end of Childish Gambino's "This Is America" when he's just running through the darkness trying to get away from everything.
Yeah.
I don't have a thought on that one yet, but I feel like there's a similar theme being played out there where like running, trying to escape, like he's trying to escape the American way and also the need for pursuit of continuous money, Childish Gambino that is, and he's trying to escape something else. I don't know. He's trying to escape the covering up of his blackness. Another thing I'll note in here is the first shots of the three women, the three like black women, the ones who aren't covered in white makeup. The shots are of their hair, not of their faces or really of their bodies. And it's I find that interesting because again, hair is such a valued and different thing within the black culture because it is just like everything else, kind of um, uh, inferiorized. And we talked about this before the
The
podcast,
podcast. Yeah.
but there's this idea of inferiorizing blackness, right? And it happens throughout Africa. Like any African you meet will immediately believe that the white people are the ones who know best. And to be honest, for the most part, while we're out there, we have no fucking clue what we're doing. But there's just this assumption that we are the superior people, and that's because it's been drilled into them via colonialism for 400, 500 years.
Into the
And I
into
and
the world,
Yeah,
into the entire world, not
yeah,
only. Yeah, this
yeah,
is
and
a.
even
Yeah.
in Western society as well. And like hair, like black hair, like true black hair, the way that they have them in their knots and everything, it's not straightened out, doesn't look like Condoleezza Rice. Like true black hair is also sort of inferiorized in the fact that they present them first off, not with their faces, not with their bodies, but with their hair. I find very interesting.
Yeah, very big symbol. Yeah. Um. Well.
But
Uh.
like, can you do me a favor? And I
I.
can pick out the visuals, but can you dive into some of the musical stuff that might be pulling these same themes? Because I just don't have the music language for it.
So I think it's going to be a little bit more obvious in this next example
Okay.
uh, of what we're talking about. It's challenging. So this is why I said that Afrofuturist music relies so heavily on um, on like the visual aspects of it, because it's hard to say there's like a futurist vibe. There's a lot of like tracks like this next one that we'll listen to by Flying Lotus. It has very much has what I would say has like an African tribal feel to it. There's parts that feel kind of like very gospel, like it feels like there are African roots in this track, and I think that's part of what you could kind of identify as being like this is an Afrofuturist feeling, but you kind of have to look at the lyrics when you're thinking about this stuff a lot of times. Like
Should I
what
turn on? Do you want me to turn on? Wait, is captions available on this one?
captions are not
Damn it!
captions are not available in this. But
So close.
just listen to some of this. Okay, so a little bit of background about Flying Lotus for those
Mm-hmm.
of you who don't know Flying Lotus. Alice Coltrane's nephew. Uh,
Mm.
so
Okay.
pretty cool. He works mostly with computers, synthesizers, samples. Like he is a genius. Obviously, can't it came from Alice Coltrane's family, so he is very immersed in this kind of I would say free free jazz, right? It comes from that background, very much in the style of like Sun Ra, what we were talking about last week, right? But it's not because he's very much modernized, right? And he's one person. I think he'll collaborate with artists sometimes, uh, but most of the things that he does are like he'll play them or they're sampled in and stuff like this. But it does have a feeling of, I would say, like alienness when you listen to it. Like, and if you listen to his other tracks that aren't this, they're even more alien sounding than this. Um, which does fit in with the kind of Sun Ra school of thought in that um, Afrofuturist music has to be alien and out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because the other tracks that we look at that have Afrofuturist vibes in the music videos, a lot of times they don't really go too heavily into the musical aspects, um, and I think that a lot of into the musical aspects of Afrofuturism
Mm-hmm.
as being like aliens, right? And if they are, it's very subtle and not really something that is like super featured. And I think that comes from a result of like the type of music that it is. A lot of times, like Janelle Monáe obviously is like a pop kind of like R&B, like she's like in a specific genre
She has a genre, and
that she has to
there's
fit in.
also a large corporate structure around her, making sure that her music can sell. And like
Exactly.
the way that you can express this while also selling your music is through the visuals, right? Because they don't care what the visuals are. Make it look pretty, fine.
So
But they
as a
do care about
result,
like what genre they're gonna plug you in for the fall release.
so as a result, I it seems like the ones that are maybe more popular features, right? That are like this
Mm-hmm.
is a really popular Afrofuturist example are going to be less Afrofuturist in the actual music themselves.
I
Um,
feel like that's a lot of that is also because as we mentioned before, I think Afrofuturism is such a recently accepted subgenre, a recently accepted movement that I don't think there's been a lot of like language laid down within the musical spectrum. There's been a ton of language laid down within the visual spectrum, but I don't think it's quite there within the like musical spectrum yet.
well, and I think that it does come from it's very hard to convey, like we have certain expectations with certain things. If you hear da da do do da do da 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 do da 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 da, that's the morning song. And I don't know if you could even hear that from actually. Did
I could
did you
hear it,
hear
but I
that?
couldn't tell it was a morning song.
Oh, okay. Well, any
But even through
musical
like
guys out there could.
instrumentation and stuff too, like what a synth says, no matter what note it's playing, is different than what a electric
So
guitar says.
that's my point, is that we have so many things that can mean different things for all of us.
Hmm.
So to say this means this. It's very hard without having visual context or something that is extremely obvious, especially when you don't have words.
Yeah.
When you don't have words that are being really explicit, right?
I
And
mean,
I would actually
like any
encourage.
other language, like any other, like every language is just an association game, right? The words we say are just associated with other things that we've been taught over the course of our lifetimes. Tree means tree because it means tree. Because we've been taught that tree means the big greeny stick thing.
Yeah.
It's same thing for music. Like we've been taught over generations that synthesizers mean like sci-fi technology, right? And that's just because that's what's been used over and over and over again. But there hasn't been associations made with a lot of like African thought and African thinking, right?
I think that the kind of choir, and we'll talk about this when we
Mm,
start playing it, but there's a singing part. There's a very prominent vocal feature uh in this that you can't really
mm-hmm.
understand what it's saying all that well.
But you
And
get the
there's
feeling.
but yeah, but it feels spiritual, like, and it feels like African spiritual, right? And I think that elicits its own feeling.
Mm-hmm.
um I think that, things like that you could start to prescribe or assign, like, okay, well, this very much has an effect. It has a desired effect, and that was on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you could point to things and say, you could say, yeah, like, essentially, you could start pointing to elements and kind of point them out as being Afro related and kind of having the desired effect
And
that
start associating them with different things. Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
And I
Uh,
think it's harder to do with the more pop stuff. But
yeah.
let's listen to this and it'll be
All right.
pretty good.
Oh, interesting. I like the shadows being right side up. Like it's like the shadows are the thing that's real. Like the passing of his father leaves us with shadowless memory, and that memory is real. Or something else. I don't know. We're going back to like the white paint. It kind of reminds me like
Yeah.
they're not quite men anymore.
So this is obviously like this guy's journey into the afterlife,
Yeah.
right?
They also feel like ash too. The way that the white clay kind of crackles and everything feels like hardened earth or like ash. You know. With dash also being like a symbol for death. his son, right?
That is his son,
Okay.
or it's assumed it's his. We don't really
The
know
boy we
any
saw in the beginning.
relationship, but it is. I think it's the boy we saw.
But is it? No, the boy we had saw. To use the pop on the earth.
I also really like the kind of shacks, right?
Yeah.
Like it's showing, um, it's showing like real life for a lot of for a lot of black people living in the United States. I think.
And also, it
Um,
reminds me of like the blue garb on, and
yeah,
he reminds me of not American, of you know Sahara, and like
yeah.
that and those kind of shacks, like the shacks, like oh no, that's common, like that, yeah. Oh, oh, so the gun is a part of his hand.
Pretty interesting, right? He has like a cybernetic. It's like cybernetic.
Like the gun is. Let me go back frame by frame by frame by frame by frame by frame by frame. Yeah, his hand is like a glove, like a metallic thing that looks like it's attached to the Uzi. Okay.
Also, note there was a. I find it interesting, and I don't know if it's really relevant, but they kind of uh, they kind of foreshadow to the flowers when he's shot in the head. There's like
There's the
rose
one
petals.
moment where like the pedal's on fire
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
yeah.
yep. So I find it interesting that this boy has to kill his father.
Okay. So something about like killing the past, killing what? Killing the thing that was his father to be replaced by the shadow?
So I was actually I was reading an interview with this filmmaker whose name is drum roll because I'm pulling up the article. Young replicant. Young
Young.
replicant.
Okay.
Uh, so he refers to uh, this European comic uh, comic book writer named, and I might be mispronouncing this. Uh, okay. Uh, Yodorowski. And the
Oh,
comic.
Jodorowsky.
Yeah, do you know this?
The name sounds stupidly familiar.
The Meta Barons, which is, and this is a quote from the article, like an Greek, epic Greek tragedy in space, and to become the Meta Baron, each generation of warrior has to kill their parent, the previous Meta Baron. It plays on the old psychoanalytical trope about sons having to kill their fathers before they become individuals.
What's the wait wait
The Meta Barons.
Alejandro Jodorowsky?
Alejandro. Yep.
Okay, got him. What was the name of the film or the
Are
thing?
is this on your? Is this on the stream right now?
It's not on the stream.
Check
I'm
out.
gonna pull it up real fast, but
Oh, okay.
it's on
The
Discord. It's not
the
on
Meta
Twitch.
Barons. The Meta Barons.
Meta Barons. Meta Barons.
meta parents. So I find it interesting. This kid has to kill his father. Now I wanted to kind of dive deeper into this because I think it's significant in the context of being an um, African boy, like to being a black boy, right? In particular, being a black young man. There is a kind of there's a kind of thing that people are taught, right? That black men are unreliable, right? That um, black men are lazy, that they are um,
Inferior.
whatever, inferior, like we were talking about before, right? And there's
Inferiority as a father, right?
and there's this, and it's almost like the idea that you have to kill that kind of idea of being uh, of what what a black man is, right? In order to be the man that you're supposed to be.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, so that was just kind of my thoughts on it, right?
So
Um,
futurism here also just being a way of, like we talked about before, in there being no past, and you kind of have to kill the past just to move forward to the future. Like that feels like a very similar kind of, like there being no past and looking towards the future for hope versus killing the past so you can look to the future for hope.
yeah,
Interesting.
that's interesting, right? And it got me thinking about like the significance of the men that were covered, that were kind of like spirits, that were covered in white chalk type of stuff. Um, like who are those men? Are
Do you think that
they
they're like the
showing
old
him the
past?
way? Are they his past? Are they like his sins that he's atoning for? Or are they his guides? Is it? I honestly don't know. Uh, and I'm curious to kind of. It does feel like they're guiding him somewhere in a way, right? Because
Are
they're
they
waiting
guiding
for
him
him.
or are they chasing him?
They
I don't
might be
know.
chasing him, but he comes
Because
downstairs
he's
and they're
always
already
moving.
waiting for him.
After he moves downstairs though, he's always moving away from them.
That's true.
He's never moving towards them. He's always trying to move away from them.
So if they are the past and he's always running away from that past. And then his son is the future, obviously, because his son is,
Son,
we now see his son with his, well,
cybernetic
yeah,
arm.
he's his son, and we also see his son with his cybernetic arm. It's like the future does kill the past then. And
Yeah,
he can't outrun the past because the future gets him. Hmm?
fucking deep,
Is that a
man.
stretch? I don't know. I don't know, but I
No,
just thought that was
I think
really
that works.
interesting.
I think that works. Yeah, no, that's and this does it from a complete, like it does it not from a sci-fi perspective, but from like a fantasy or a
Spiritual.
spiritual perspective. And I'm gonna use this as a perfect segue to go into my thing, and talk a little bit about something. If I click buttons, it will make it happen. I want to talk about Kati Kati. No, I just deleted my life. It's okay. We will live. So Kati Kati is a film from, I think, Kenya. Don't quote me on that one if I'm wrong. Pretty sure it's Kenya though. And it is a film about um, a woman who dies, and she's in this game, this pretty famous like resort, or like reserve out in Kenya called Keti Keti. during which time she and everyone there have no recollection of why they're there, and throughout the course of the film they find out that they are indeed dead and or in this sort of like afterlife period in which they have to like sort of find peace. Like there's this idea
I'm heartily sorry for offending you.
of
Where am I?
This is Kati Kati. And you're
it's
here
not
because
quite
you're dead.
purgatory. It's a very Africanized idea of it, but
You
it's
wake up hoping
basically
for
a form of
paradise.
purgatory where you get to spend time,
This is what you get.
Don't manage
you know,
your story.
finding peace within yourself, or
The
be
madness,
corrupted by your
nightmares.
failings
Your
and
hands.
become
What is that?
dead.
It happens to some of us here.
What's your
And
problem?
deadness here
You just had to drag her
is
into
deadness
this.
of the spirit, deadness of the soul.
How did you die?
And it's represented by,
Nini?
and I find this interesting. that
It
you
would be
brought
much
that up
easier
with,
if you don't question everything.
With,
I don't know anything about your
the,
life.
last musician.
You need to remember
by
your life.
white ashy
You need to
hands,
know
or
why
white
you are.
ashy skin.
I resolve with the help of
And
your
that
grace.
symbolizes
I'll
being dead.
confess all my sins.
But it doesn't just symbolize being dead. It symbolizes
have to
like
keep
death
hope
of the
alive.
soul,
Hope.
like complete loss.
Wewe na hope.
Symbolizes
Ungekuwa
through
na
like
hope,
this like
ungekuwa hapa.
becoming white.
Si ungekusha jitoa.
It's not
Why
that
do
your
you do all
body is dead,
this?
it's that your spirit is, right?
Good
Wow.
Samaritan.
Interesting. I wonder if that's something that we don't know
Listen,
about
please,
African culture.
Tabaki umeniachilia.
It's not something I've lost in
We'll all leave this place.
Thessalonian culture.
Like
but
spiritual-
It
No one
might
stays
be
here
a
forever.
like
African
maybe something
spirituals
in, like
or something like
Indian
that.
culture or something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know about that because that would also make sense in the kind of people that are leading, that are leading that guy is running away from in that music video. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention about that last artist. He's one of my all-time favorite artists, Flying Lotus, and that song is like not really a representation, I feel like, of what all of the rest of his music sounds like. So you guys should check it out because it sounds way different than that. Very, very much more eccentric and alien sounding.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so that really
So
so that's one of the person on the left, right?
It's person, but it's the same person.
Okay,
He's like staring into his dead self in this shot,
interesting.
right? And he had the main character in the background. And there's this idea of like the spiritual or death of the soul
Yeah.
happening here. And I find it interesting that like Flying Lotus has the same symbolism within it. And I don't know which one came first because this film came out in 2016. When did Flying Lotus come out with that one?
Oh, I think that was 2015. I think it was 2015.
So I have no idea who came first on this one.
And what's the name of this filmmaker?
Oh,
Again?
the filmmaker, Kati Kati, was made by. The director was. I'm not going to get this one. Mbithi Masai. Mbithi Masai. I hope I got that right.
The
Yeah.
other thing that I wanted to mention is that I believe the film, the film that we watched that was Petite Noir. I want to look up because I noticed the filmmaker, the director of that. Let's see, was it the director? Maybe this is another one. Okay, never mind.
Never mind.
Disregard that.
Moving on?
Disregard it. Yeah, move on.
Alright.
Move on. I
Um,
was confused with another video I was looking at. Alright.
Do we want to discuss the next other Flying Lotus video or no?
I don't think we. No, I don't think so because I think that we should. I want to let people discover Flying Lotus for themselves. And B, I don't think it's as good of a representation of Afrofuturism, or at least it's not as clear as these other examples have been. Still, everyone should should absolutely go check out like all of Flying Lotus's music. There is a Flying Lotus radio station on GTA 5, Fly Low.
There is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, pretty awesome. It has a bunch of.
I'm so glad a Rockstar turns their game designers into slaves so we can have that. That's great. No, but that's really cool. I'm impressed with that. That's really good.
Anyways, no, I think why don't we move on to kind of, we don't have to go back to the music.
Perfect.
Why don't we move on to
I've got a whole pathway to go through now.
All right.
I've charted it out. My brain is ready to go. So I'm going to start off with another film, and then I'll move into literature. So the film I want to show you is a Nigerian film called Hello Rain. It's just a trailer. It's based on a short novel by Nnedi I had this before. I'm gonna need to get back to you on that one. I need to see the name again. I know who it is. They did Binti series. I gotta get the right pronunciation on the name. I want to say Okafor, but I'm gonna hold off on that. But it's a film that has this sort of like blending of fashion. It has this blending of science, and it has this blending of mysticism and witchcraft. It's about this woman who creates these wigs and weaves in the African culture. I'm sure it's true in the Western culture as well, but it's way more in the African culture because taking care of long hair is almost impossible within Africa. Not with sorry, within my experience in Sierra Leone, it's really difficult. And so wigs and weaves become a very, important replacement for those kind of things, for femininity and womanhood. And so it blends in this wig maker who makes these wigs through a combination of science and witchcraft that imbue the wearer with like great power, right? And so I find it interesting that there's this combination that happens with it.
We were three women, three
and
friends.
as we talked before, it's like combining
We had goals, hopes and dreams. Then I
science
made
and
these
mysticism together.
wigs. Don't ever mix juju with technology. There is a witchcraft to science and a science to
I love
witchcraft.
the colors.
Both will
Yeah, the
conspire
colors
against you
on this
eventually.
palette are great.
I could see them.
My body.
It does kind of make me
It's
think of the colors that I
My
saw in
face
Space is the
It's
Place a
flawless.
little bit.
My hair.
Very rich, vibrant colors.
Yeah.
is
It also
power.
reminds me a lot of this one. Reminds me a lot of Neon Demon, where like the colors are like drop and also.
I am beast. I am lovely. I was born beautiful.
Don't ever mix juju with technology.
Put it back on, Rain. No, Philo.
And you notice how her hair
I
is like
won't.
patchy and not quite.
Has turned us to
Yeah.
poor witches.
It's not. Yeah. Like that's a pretty Okorafor. Oh my God, Okorafor is her name. Man, that kills me. Nnedi Okorafor. But within the African culture, like the wigs that you wear and the weaves that you have are very important to like
Yeah.
your own self-expression. Like, you being able to shampoo and condition your hair even on a weekly basis is really difficult in a lot of places out there. And so the way that you take care of your hair is you just have short hair and you get wigs and weaves and stuff like that. And I find it interesting how, like, as we talked about before, there's this blending of shouldn't mix science with juju. You shouldn't mix science with mysticism, because like this will corrupt the soul, or this will do something terrible to you. And I'm not going to spoil the film, but like that. And I find it interesting that even there's still this exploration of trying to mix the old with the new. Even though it looks at it from a negative perspective, it's still there. And hair being an important thing on that scene. I'm going to use this to move into instead of I don't know, Brian, give me some of your thoughts on that one before I move on to the next one.
Well, so this is based on this book, Binti.
No.
That's what you're saying? What is the what is the okay, you're not showing this on stream. I'm sorry.
No, I'm finding what I'm going to talk about next.
I was getting so confused at the stuff that you were putting on the Discord stream.
I'm running my brain so I know what's up on deck for next
my
thing.
God.
But I want you to talk for a minute.
I thought that you were trying to refresh me on
the
it.
same author who wrote Binti wrote the short story Hello.
Okay, that's the relevance. Okay, that's what I was grasping for. Okay. I find it interesting that it's about combining like it seems like the most effective, or at least from what I see as effective, and being effective being a synonym, I guess, here for deep. Maybe not deep, but the pieces that only touch like the surface level, or like like they usually are more very stereotypically futuristic, and it seems like the stuff that we've really dove into, where there's been like a lot of context and meaning behind things, are the stuff where doesn't really go too much into the actual futurism of it. Like, it's not futurist vibes, it's more, or it's not futurism in the aesthetics, it's like futurism in the mind, in a way, right? And I find that interesting, and it seems like these examples that you're showing aren't really futurism of like, they're not super futuristic in the ways that we kind of saw the older examples were. And that we even the Janelle Monáe one, which is like from, I think, 2009. I think that might be wrong. That's when the music video was posted.
Let's just say 2009.
We're just gonna guess, yeah. But
we're bad at our jobs.
So that's we need an intern.
We do need an intern.
We'll pay you in beer.
Experience.
Coronavirus-free beer. Social distanced.
So
beer.
No corona. just
that's
what?
So
just
unfortunate for. Did you hear that Corona sales actually went down? Like during the Corona, like that's such a bummer.
It's stupid. So people are stupid. What do you want from us? We are stupid individuals. We're a stupid species.
How unfortunate.
What do you want?
How unfortunate. And apparently, that this is even more sidetracked. That Flying Lotus video that we were watching, I was reading some of the comments on YouTube, and people were most definitely talking about how like coronavirus essentially brought them this, because the title is like Coronis, or something like that. I forget what it's called. Coronis something. So anyways, I just find it interesting that it seems like the examples that we've delved into the most, where we've gone the deepest and they've been the most like interesting to talk about, have not been the ones that were super futurist aesthetics, like obvious
I think
futurist
that's going to
aesthetics.
change on my next set of examples and stuff here, but I think you're right. Again, it's going back to like it's not about the sci-fi elements; it's about the mindset that you're. I feel like we're trying to build a language for the mindset and language for the thoughts themselves, and then building out the futurism aesthetic on top of it. Because I feel like we don't have a language for like African or Black thinking or thought, right? Like there's no language for us as to white people to explore these things. Or there's language for it, but it takes time to. It's not a complete language. It takes time for us to build that out. Um, and I recognize this, especially with myself, in talking and dealing with my friends in Sierra Leone. Like we oftentimes are on complete different wavelengths. And if we have to spend a good amount of time in our especially our deeper conversations to find that like middle understanding between each
Like
other.
a common ground.
Yeah, and I think it's just we think in different ways, and there's different modes of thought that I've never had to build a language for. And so now, like, we're trying to spend time building that language out. And I think that's a lot of what the Afrofuturism movement is building out that language for everybody to kind of understand, not just people within the own, African or Black society.
Yeah, or people within only the American society. I think that even though obviously the Flying Lotus video is based in, it looks like it's based in kind of like the United States, like an urban area. That's a video that can be understood and like uh understood by a larger population of like the African diaspora, right? Like, and it feels that way. It doesn't feel like it's only American, right? Because it
Yeah,
feels spiritual. It
it
feels
feels
more
like there's a
spiritual.
there's a pan African element to it.
Yes.
Again, like we've mentioned, the first person in the tent that we see that I like identify with doesn't look American at all. He looks like he's from like Chad or like the Central African Republic or like um, Western Sahara or something like that. Like I can clearly see him coming from Senegal, not from downtown Detroit or any American city.
Yeah.
So interesting. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take this moment to shift a little bit into Nola Hopkins, who is an author of Caribbean American descent, and I find it interesting that within all of the Afrofuturism writers, most of them are female, most of them are she's,
Yeah.
and I think there's a vast difference, I think, in the way that different cultures value different gendered perspectives. I'm not going to say that these perspectives are specifically female or women, but like the things that like Western culture values are not what we typically think of as female, right?
Yeah.
They're typically male perspectives or male coded identifiers. And I think that I find it interesting that the way that Afrofuturism came about is through a lot of female perspectives, um, especially within the literature or literary component. So Nola Hopkins wrote this book called Brown Girl in the Ring. It's been adapted as a Hulu series that
Oh,
didn't
cool.
get a whole lot of love. Um, but I think they're in talks for doing another series on HBO, but that's what I just got through rumor mill. So who knows? But what it basically does is it follows a young girl in Toronto who lives in the future during a decayed America, Canada, that has basically fallen apart and has, you know, much in the way of Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower. Things
Yeah.
have fallen apart.
Yeah.
Things fall apart. I'm going to hold on to the thought, things fall apart. That's another important one in my brain. So she lives with her grandmother and ends up having a kid out of wedlock, and has to go through this trials and tribulations to kind of get by. But the main kind of themes that the book plays with are focused on the difference between her grandmother and herself. And her grandmother follows a lot of old ways, a lot of old like spiritual ways that she doesn't believe, that the granddaughter doesn't really believe in. Granddaughter is very modernized and is very distant from the old ways of the past. And the grandmother spends time trying to teach her these old like mystical powers and these old like mystical ways that come from like the old country and also like the ancestors before them. And while they go through this you know trials and tribulations of her having to raise her kid during this great downfall of Western civilization, or of like the American and Canadian civilizations, that like she discovers within herself these like powers that she has, and has to learn them through her grandmother, but also doesn't just have her grandmother teach her how to live. She has to take those powers of ancient wisdom and bring them into a modern front and bring them into a modern way of living in order to benefit herself and those around her.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting, just like in the Hello Rain story that we're talking about, that there's this blending of like science, technology, and witchcraft and mysticism in Brown Girl in the Ring. There's also this blending of like mysticism from the grandma and from the old country, and a modern way of living, right? And there's that blending that happens again as we continue to see, of trying to approach the modern world through a not just an African lens, but an African lens that goes back generations. There's a way of like bringing in the old and the mystic to the modern front, or in this case, a future front that is during. I think in this one it's like 2020, 2030 or something like that, but it was written in the 1990s, so it's what they thought the future was going to be. I do find it interesting that both Octavia Butler and her thought the future was going to be shit, and they weren't wrong. So I find that interesting as a story arc that continues to happen in both films and in music videos and stuff, over and over and over and over again through the Afrofuturism movement.
Yeah.
Thoughts, go. Also, don't look at this one. I'm setting up the next thing.
Put me on the spot there, dude.
I put you on the spot because I'm prepping the next one. But also, unlike the music videos, it's really hard for me to like give you a synopsis of a book.
Yeah, it's challenging to talk about it in a media. I was thinking about that too. It's really nice to have the music videos are like one of the nicest ways to kind of talk about it, because we can all watch it and then discuss what's going on. But it's like the book is challenging because you kind of just have to give a little summary of what's going on, and then we have to kind of like ascertain what is useful from that, or what is useful, but what is important about that.
And going through and reading all these books and everything took me like 2 weeks.
Yeah. So it's,
and
if
that's
you're
2 weeks of burning through these books on like 2.5 speed. So yeah.
Audible.
Thank you, Audible.
Thank you, Audible. Free Amazon. Do we get Amazon money for that? Doubt it.
No.
They're like, free advertising on our platform? Hell yeah.
Exactly. Although, also, thank you, Audiobook Bay. Sorry. Cough, cough, cough. Huh.
Well, that was weird. Some
Also,
static in the stream.
Parable of the Sower is there's a woman. I need to grab her YouTube channel. She did an entire audiobook of Parable of the Sower for free on her YouTube channel.
Oh, cool.
It's great. 2 thumbs up. So, I'll put that in the description on our YouTube channel so people can find it.
Now, Nick, I'm going to step away to use the restroom, so just continue the stream. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Continue the stream. Actually, you know what? No.
You're going to wait
this
for
is
me?
a perfect time for intermission. We'll both be back in a minute because I don't want to just ramble on for a minute.
Oh, okay. All right, that
So
works.
I
Let's
don't
do
have
that.
a media because the next one I'm going to do is a book, and I want you here for that discussion because this one
Okay.
ties into a lot of stuff, and then it'll
All
get
right.
ready for the artwork stuff, and then we'll be done.
All right, well, then
So-
let's take a quick intermission.
Back in 2 minutes, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody. So we're gonna go ahead and start just moving through the next couple things. So I have a book, one more book to kind of get through with everybody, and then a few visual artists who I've found on Afrofuturism, visual artists working within Africa itself. But first, let's go ahead and start with the book. Now, there's the idea of trying to combine the old world with the new, as we started talking about before, and the mystic with the sci-fi. And in this one, this is a book by Nita Okorafor, the same woman who wrote the original short story that was adapted to Hello Rain, that film that we previewed. And this one, I think you're going to start picking up on a lot of different themes and metaphors that kind of get carried through over and over and over again throughout a lot of these pieces of art that I think will converge pretty nicely. So the book I'm going to go ahead and talk about is called Binti. And Binti is a sci-fi trilogy that basically follows this woman who has these giant locks of tangly hair, who gets into in the first book, she gets into a university that is on the other side of the galaxy. This is set way into the future. And so she has to, leave her home on Earth and go onto the spaceship and travel all the way across the galaxy to go to this university, right? And the story of the first one takes place, and again, this is spoiler territories. I'm not going to ruin any of the endings, but spoilers ahead. And it follows her as she's on this ship that is going through space, and they get attacked by these renegade pirates, enemy alien species that are basically these giant squid monsters, right? And one of the things that happens here that is interesting is that the main character of Binti can actually communicate with these squid monsters that are at war with different human races. Like, humanity is splintered off into these different ethnic groups, and there's different races that are fighting with these alien groups. And so she can actually communicate with them, and the entire book has her running around trying to save the ship while also making peace with this alien tentacle monster race. And there's this idea she's alien from everybody else on the ship because she's a different ethnic group than they are, but she also identifies with the humanity, but she also identifies with the alien group, the tentacle monsters. And there's a repeating thing that keeps happening throughout the trilogy, in which there's a metaphor of her hair that keeps coming up, where she has these giant spindly tentacle hairs. And this came from Nettie is a Nigerian American, and a lot of times when she went back home, she'd go through a lot of old customs with her family and everything. And so she would have, go through the old customs and have hair. This is Nettie on one of her trips over there, and they go through the ceremonial customs of making these spindles with the mud and the clay and everything to make this tentacle hairs.
Oh wow!
And this is actual a tradition within her group in Nigeria. And I don't know what tribe she's from. I should have researched that one. I'm sorry. Had a lot to go through this past 2 weeks. But
So that's made from clay?
Yeah. There's clay that they put throughout their hair and on their body, and it's part of this traditional garb and part of these ceremonies that they do. But what I love and I find interesting is that there's this presence that she feels alien from the rest of humanity, and therefore can identify with the alien species and make peace between the two, right? There's still this idea of alienness within it. And in the second book, she's got to go through and come back home after her travels, after making peace with the alien species and everything, and find that there is tension amongst all of her own people and own tribes on Earth, and has to deal with these different like competing factions between, ethnic groups on the planet, and realizes that like they are also alien to each other. And I love that there's this continuing idea of alienation no matter where you go. And I just wanted to get your sense on like this idea of like alienation, being able to identify with the alien, and the idea of like hair being such an important metaphor within that context.
I think that it's kind of fitting that
And to give you reference, like her tentacle hairs you see here, like mirror the hairs of, or mirror the tentacles of the alien species.
So I think it's kind of fitting that her otherness is what makes her be able to essentially relate with these aliens. I think. Is there a sense that nobody else can communicate with them, right?
Yeah,
Is that
for
what?
now. Like in book 2 and 3, there is more communication, but like in book 1, it's like it's her.
It's just interesting that her kind of, in a way, her alienness is what makes it so she can, what makes her be able to relate to them, not necessarily communicate with them, because I don't know the science behind that, or like why she is able to.
Sci-fi hand wave.
Do they go into that? Yeah, okay, that's why I figured something
Sci-fi
like that.
mystic hand wave.
But the kind of idea that she is similar to them and so different from the people that she actually is supposed to be similar to, that she can relate more to the aliens than she can relate to her own, what's supposed to be her own species, is kind of fitting, and it fits perfectly into the theme of Afrofuturism, of like being kind of like not belonging to this world. I also really like the tentacle thing that you mentioned, that the aliens have tentacles. They're tentacle aliens.
Yeah, they're kind of these squid jellyfish sort of. Let's see if I can pull up here.
So it very much does mirror the kind of the hair, the kind of traditional
pull the whole thing.
Headdress thing. That's really interesting, and what that had to be conscious, right?
Yeah,
like I'm sure.
There's no way it was unconscious. Like I'll show once this loads in, I'll show you it. But you see how she has these large go back to the group. You see how she has these large, so this is like what the tentacle monsters are supposed to look like in the background, right? This is like the alien species.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see her hair makes these like long wavy tentacle.
They're almost enveloping into each other. If they weren't, yeah, they're different colors, but I could see them kind of like meshing together.
Well, it's funny you say that, because in this book, if you notice, her hair is now blue and tentacly.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
In the third book, it mirrors exactly the tentacles of the monster.
Oh, that's the third book? That's the third book? That makes sense then. There's like a transformation. She's becoming more like the aliens than her own human race.
Yeah, the way she describes it is like, book 1 is a girl leaves home, book 2, girl comes back home, book 3 finds that home is really within herself.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that's and I would highly recommend that book series. It's really good, phenomenal. So if you got yourself some Audible or audiobook by, go ahead and find it, read it, really good.
There's that interference again. I don't know what's
happening.
Somebody keeps adding some weird random phrases into our stream. I don't know.
It's crazy.
It's a mystery to me. It's a mystery.
It's a mystery to us all, Brian. I think it's a mystery to everyone. So lastly, I want to go through some visual stuff that I was able to find. One of the biggest things I noticed is that within the film world, there's a few things coming from Africa, but not a lot. Most of the stuff that we see with the Afrofuturism is coming from the US, and, is Black Panther. But one of
Okay. Wow. God. Well, the guy, the little colonial British guy in the right. Oh my gosh. There's so much, and then that's like, but she's an android. It's a black android. Very well. It's the skin kind of interesting. Uh, yeah, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm a little delayed because I'm watching it on the stream, but um, yeah, on the Twitch stream, just because it looks really clear. No, it's okay. It's not that much of a delay. It's only a couple seconds. Wow. I really like this series. Who's this artist? It's a series? It's a series of artists? Is it like a collective? Oh, okay. Oh, it's one artist. And what is this series called? What is this collection? Oh, Fragile. Okay. Fragile. I really love that you have this kind of cybernetic like skin. There's like this, like the skin is obviously black, right? Like very black though. Like very, very black, like as black as combustible, like black as the sky. But then there's this kind of like cybernetic uh trace uh of over all their skins, like they're robots. But then like the features are very prominently feel African too, right? Like you could tell the lips and like the kind of like the headdress, right? The all of the clothes feel very traditional African. You mean DRM?
Eric, how about now? Is that better? Perfect, thank you.
Oh, what happened? I wonder how long that's been going on.
I think it's only been going on for like a minute or two. I've been watching my audio levels. They just dropped now.
Let the hate flow through you. A few minutes.
A few minutes. Okay, that's good to know.
Oh my gosh.
So, DRC is where we get most of our coltan cobalt from. It's what is used in our microchips. And so there's the idea here of like their bodies being used as, because like so much of the mining happening over there is horrific, their bodies being used as materials just to build out our technology, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Which is why you have colonialism here. You notice we have little colonial British guy over here and China over here.
Interesting.
So
Are you gonna explain it, or are you gonna make me look like an idiot on stream?
I'm trying to get the guy's name. No, I feel like they did explain it though, right? Like that's what's happening here. Like you have like these black
What's
bodies.
the significance of China, though? I don't understand that.
China, the country of China, is also a neo-colonial power that is is utilizing the slavery of people in the Democratic Republic of Congo to mine out all of the materials that get used in making microchips that China makes to sell to the U.S.
All right. I understand. Yeah, that makes sense. This is a very, very clear depiction of that now. Now that you explained it that way,
Yeah.
It makes like 1,000% more sense. Wow. Let's go back to that. Let's go to the next one again. Not back. Go forward to the other one again.
I'm gonna go with one that's not as colonialistically pessimistic and go to one of futuristic one. So there is this artist that I love, who has a lot of these like very flat images that are not loading because of reasons. But she deals with a lot of like time and geometric shapes and also like pixelation and stuff. Oh, wrong way. Sorry. So this artist is from Botswana, and she does a lot of stuff with like multiple bodies blending and melding together, or the same body blending and melding together in different times. And so she's very interested with this idea of like time being transparent. So you have this like this spacey star stuff held within this geometric shape, but you also have these multiple legs of the same person and these multiple like faces that are just different points in time, right? And she's very interested in the past meeting the present meeting the future, right? That idea of time being carried through, but also being disjointed from each other.
It makes me think of Space is the Place.
Yeah.
The actual movie.
Yep.
Yeah, the actual movie. Yeah.
And you can see like this one, like it's two women, or it's the same woman in two different positions in time, being like cradling this like weird geometric like shape in the middle. It feels like these like crystals, time crystals holding everything together. In this one, like this woman is holding this like geometric shape and is being like is the stars herself, right?
And what do you think is the significance of the shape is I guess the past and the present?
The shape or like the multiple bodies?
Is it maybe well, it seems like in this one there like the centerpiece is most definitely like she's holding it, and in the kind of the one where it's multiple figures that are kind of all blue and they're hunched together, kind of like a gymnast, right? They're all like kind of contorted.
Mm-hmm.
Even that one is also the focus is very much the shapes.
I
right
think,
there, yeah.
I think, and I don't know, but I think the geometric shapes are they're like a universal constant, right? This is the universe. Is this triangle, right? It's a universal shape that is always a constant, right? And like there's this idea of like people are weird amorphic things that flow through time, but the shape is constant. And so there's this idea of like connecting the past with the present and the future, and these things being disjointed, but trying to reach to something that is real and true and honest, right? And I think that's what the shapes kind of represent is this fundamental truth of the universe that they're trying to get to. And I think she tries to get to it through like these different like melding shapes of humanity, where I think on the Western idea we try to get to it through like measuring each side of the shape.
Yeah, it's kind of like where does the past and the present and the future intersect, and whatever you have is like the result. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
All right, got two more and then we're done. This one I like because it does remind me a lot of like Space is the Place kind of stuff. So I don't know, it just feels like the moving away to the stars kind of thing here, and it has this sort of like colorful, funky aesthetic that I like, and it kind of reminds me of Space is a Place as far as this like this aesthetic.
The eyes too.
Yeah. This artist, again, I don't remember the names. This artist is from Benin.
So the eyes make me think of the thing that he's wearing. Doesn't he have something on his head?
The big giant,
he, like has a scepter.
Yeah.
And there's the scepter kind of has like eye, or maybe it's his hat that has his thing that has an eye.
And this is a sculpture he made. Which one? The one before? This guy?
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit delayed. Remember? Yeah, I like the sculpture. It feels like the sculpture feels like it's like Daft Punk combined.
It does.
With
like with the seashells from the beach and everything. It feels like Daft, and I just appreciate it because I find it funny, and I like this artist because I feel like he takes it way less seriously, and I enjoy that. And lastly, we have a Kenyan artist who does a lot of Photoshop work, and he again also works with a lot of these paints and stuff that we see before. He also works with a lot of different like brands and stuff. He built also this own personal like little universe in this like dystopian society where people have to like cobble together their own limbs and everything, which I find interesting. Even with the music video we were looking at before, where the kid has no arm and has to be replaced with this like violent machine. It reminds me a lot of like the people in Sierra Leone who also don't have the limbs because of the war. And this one reminds me of like people don't have limbs because of whatever societal collapse happened, and they have to replace it with like these different like augmented things that just fit. So I find his work pretty interesting. His work reminds me of most of what you consider like Afrofuturism, or like the more typical like futurism ideas.
It's like if you were to imagine it, if somebody was like, what is Afrofuturism, and you kind of got a general vibe, somebody kind of explained to you what it was. I feel like this is kind of the type of image that you would have. This feels like very. Oh, I like that one.
So this one is a series he made in conjunction with Black Panther. Funny enough, and he made this like short story about these like 3 elders who are blind who also live in the future of an African society, and they there's these, each one has their own story. So like this is like he's the tall one, he's the one that can see furthest ahead, and then this one, which is like the manly one, the one who's like the most muscular and the one who can fight the best. And then this one, which is the leader, and I find it interesting that the leader is a woman, or has like more feminine qualities. Like she's the one who actually leads this tribe into like the future of all remembering the past and everything. But they're all each one of them is blind, and that's why they have it covering the thing covering their eyes.
That is interesting. It kind of makes me think of, and I'm not sure exactly the significance, but it does make me think of the Flying Lotus video where the kid is missing his arm, and at the end of the video when he kills his dad, he has a cybernetic arm.
Are you talking about these three characters, or are you talking about the characters before?
I was talking about the characters before
from the Apocalypse. These guys.
But yeah, for the apocalyptic guys.
Yeah.
But this makes me think more of like it kind of makes me think like they are dressing kind of like it makes me think of Hunger Games. That kind of.
Actually, yeah.
Right, the dress especially.
Mm-hmm. And also the hair.
Kind of wig. Yeah, the wig. Yeah, the hair. Very much.
It feels like they're trying to reclaim this idea of hair and stuff being so important, but they're trying to reclaim like the old colonial aristocracy. Because when I saw that hair, I'm thinking like, oh, this is like, French era before the Revolution. Like
bourgeois, yeah.
Like it's very bourgeois. It's very like it feels like the French like curly locks and everything with the fake wigs and all that. It reminds me so much of that. Of like what like the beginning of colonialism was, and like how the aristocracy used to be, and like reminds me just of that.
Interesting.
But I don't know. This last one makes me feel like it feels like it's like one of the most like quintessential Afrofuturism stuff, but I feel like it's the least. It feels like it draws upon the least like Afrofuturism themes the most.
It's the most like it is the most on the surface.
Yes.
Like Afrofuturist, right? And I think that is kind of a general theme is that it's you really have to kind of give a like you have to assign your own meaning sometimes to these like right, you could just look at this all day and not really assign any kind of Afrofuturist vibe. I mean, obviously, it's there are black people there, and obviously they're in kind of like more futuristic garb, but like those aren't the themes of Afrofuturism, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you were like, if we started with that piece, with that artwork, I think it would be very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
To like try to explain exactly.
Yeah, to try and do a dive on it.
Yeah, if you're trying to say like, okay, here's what Afrofuturism is, it has to do with these themes, and then we're like, here's the like very much only the visual aesthetic of it.
So I guess closing out, because we're getting to the end of our time here. What do you from these like 2 to 3 weeks that we've spent diving into all of this stuff? What do you think are like what do you think you've come to find is Afrofuturism, and what do you think you have discovered that Afrofuturism offers us as artists?
I think that one of the big things is it is exploring of Africanness and blackness through a uniquely African and black lens, right? That's a big part. It has to be through that lens. Because I think that a lot of times the blackness is explored not through a black lens. Like when we see like this over-sexualization of like, or like let's make an easier example, because we're already talking about this, the commodification of black women in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
That's very much through a American lens, like, or like a white person's lens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you re-examine that same issue in an Afrofuturist sense, that's like that is what that is. It's examining that aspect of it through the eyes of an African person and re-envisioning it in a way that is positive, that is hopeful. I think that's another important part of it, because almost, not almost, I think all of the examples that we had have hopeful messages at the end. Even the Flying Lotus one, which was dark in some ways, right? Because the kid kills his father at the end. This man is moving into the spiritual. He's passing on. You know, when he kills his father, it's like
It's
flowers.
flowers. Yeah.
Flowers come from his head, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and the man's like surrounded by his family and stuff. So I think there's always has to be a positive hope, or not necessarily positive, but a hope, some kind of hope, some kind of like maybe an aspiration, maybe a like it's better, you know, there's something waiting for us that's better. Um and that's why you have multiple videos like where people are rising, like ascending into like heaven or into another world or space or wherever it may be, right? There's all these themes of ascension.
Yeah.
um so I think that ascension is important because it's about, you know, it's about ascending towards a positive place, ascending towards something that is better, um, that's something to look forward to, something that isn't here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that also ties in with again, there's just the themes that we've been harping on over and over and over again. The themes of alienation being that like here isn't the place, but there is a place. There's a place and a time for us and our people.
Yeah.
And there's a place that we can find that isn't here, because here doesn't work for the African or the Black people, and also let's be honest, it doesn't work for any of us. But here isn't the place. We are alienated from here, but there is a place out there that we can find. And what that place looks like is one where we accept our ancestry, we accept the blending of mysticism and reality, or of the spiritual and the reality, and
Yeah.
we can find a place that isn't built around colonialism and alienation and slavery and segregation. Cool, great.
And with that, yeah, let's wrap it up. That was a really good deep dive.
No, and I'm glad we went this long, because I don't think we could have gone through as deep as we had to on the subject without going into this two-parter. So
I've learned so much about just Afrofuturism in general, and just like a lot of artists that I really explored. Like I love Flying Lotus, but I've never seen a video before. I have that album, and I've listened to that track a bunch of times, but I don't know how I haven't seen the music video. But as soon as it kind of goes back to like these pieces being more than just like the musical pieces being more than just a song, because they mean so much more when the um the visuals with them. Like that was very much intentional. Also, I would recommend checking out the interview with the director of that one, who is Young Replicant. That's the filmmaker. Uh, he has some other cool stuff. And all of Flying Lotus's videos are really cool also, and they do have some like Afrofuturist vibes, which you'll have to figure out for yourself now that you've gotten a little like
now you got a
starter.
taste of
Starter in
a 3-hour
Afrofuturist.
starter on the whole thing.
So everybody go check out all the music we've been talking about, check out the books, check out the movies, just check everything out, go explore some culture.
And
educated.
we will re-upload this video onto our YouTube channel at LemonBucket Studios YouTube channel, and we'll in the description we'll have links for all the stuff down below. But yeah, no, check it out. I think it's vastly important to get a grasp on how this artwork is impacting the rest of the media world, and it might give you guys some great ideas for how you guys want to approach sci-fi and futurism and just storytelling in general. But with that, I'm gonna say thank you for sticking with me for this 2-hour long escapade, Brian. Really appreciate it, and take care.
Bye, guys.